Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to your first digital lecture, part 2. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we were busy discovering what the internet is and where does it come from exactly. We've completed a definition, and now we're going to have a look at a more detailed explanation. Alright, we agreed that it is therefore a network of networks, and the word internet comes from the phrase informational network. The computers in the network communicate with one another by using a digital communications method known as packet switching. Now, on page 2 of your textbooks, you will see a reference to the double-click privacy litigation case, which gives us a very clear description of what packet switching is. Basically, it says the computer that wants to send data cuts the data up into small packets of information, and it labels each packet with information such as the destination address and where the packet fits in with the original data. These packets are sent through a network to a server and then on to an external router. From the external router, they are passed on to the next router that is available. But each packet can take different paths to the destination. It all depends on where there is the least amount of traffic. This process is repeated until all the packets that make up the original data arrive at their destination, where they are reassembled into their original order. The receiving computer then sends a message back to the sending computer, either confirming that all the packets have arrived, or it requests the sending computer to send the missing packets. Now, of course, this happens all in a matter of seconds, and it is made possible by using the TCP/IP protocol. Now, a protocol is a format, a procedure, or a technical specification on how a communication system works. The IP protocol moves the packets of data from node to node based on a destination address known as an IP number. The TCP protocol is responsible for verifying the correct delivery of data. In other words, if any defects or errors are in the message, it triggers a retransmission of data until the data has been correctly delivered. The end user will usually connect through an internet service provider, an ISP, who will operate the servers. Is there a difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? Yes. The internet is widely recognized as the physical structure, in other words, the servers, the computers, the fiber optic cables, and the routers through which data is shared. The World Wide Web, or WWW, is the data, an immense collection of documents, texts, images, audio clips, etc., etc., that is stored on servers and made available through the TCP/IP protocol. Now, each document, image, or clip has a unique Universal Resource Locator, URL, that identifies its physical location in the internet infrastructure, and users access these by sending request messages to the servers that store the data. Alright, but as we are concerned with the study of the law and ICT, we need to have a look at the main pieces of legislation that are specifically relevant in the ICT law arena. Obviously, first and foremost is the Constitution, and we all know about its supremacy and the influence on all other law. But the main provisions which we will work with are Section 14, Privacy, Section 16, Freedom of Expression, and Section 32, Access to Information, which is given effect to in the Promotion of Access to Information Act, or PIA. And you will have already heard in other parts of the world, access should be a human right. The second most important act that we will look at extensively is the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act 25 of 2002. And you will get intimate knowledge of some of the most important chapters of this Act. You can see in your textbooks what this Act covers, and we will begin with that in the lectures that are to come. Alright, next on the list is RECA, or the Regulation of Interception of Communication Related Information Act 70 of 2002, which has caused a lot of commentary, particularly because Section 40 requires ISPs to obtain certain information from their clients, and Section 62 requires cell phone operators to obtain minimum information from its clients or owners of a phone or of a SIM card. But it also regulates the interception of communications, the functions of ISPs, and other telecom service providers. Now, Section 2 prohibits the unlawful monitoring and surveillance. Sections 3 to 11 list some of the exceptions. That will be when surveillance may take place, for example, where an intercepting party has been given prior written consent. And then we also have Section 30 in RECA, where telecommunications service providers and internet service providers have to store communication-related information for considerable periods of time. We also have the Electronic Communications Act 36 of 2005, and this Act, also known as the ECA, works hand in hand with the ICASA Act. Now, both of these are promulgated to promote and facilitate convergence, and they contain provisions on policy for licensing, electronic networks, control over our radio frequency spectrum, technical equipment specifications, interconnection, broadcasting, numbers and number portability, and then the functionings and powers of ICASA. And in general, a person cannot provide any telecom services without licensing and compliance with the ECA. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very new kid on the block. This Act was the longest serving bill ever and has now been enacted as the Protection of Personal Information Act 4 of 2013, also popularly referred to as POPI, and this is something which we will deal with a lot later in privacy data. But these are not the only pieces of legislation that are relevant in this area of the law. So, for example, we will see the impact of technology or ICT on legislation like the Copyright Act, the Criminal Procedure Act, the Films and Publications Act, the Tax Acts, the Reserve Bank Act, the National Payment System, Gambling Act, Consumer Protection, Credit Act, Sexual Offences, and the Harassment Act. And it's simply impossible to cover everything in a short semester course. So I have selected a few, but this just gives you an idea of the scope of the impact that ICT has had on law.